This is the 5th edition of the Tiny Lab Talks, and today we are going to be talking about interaction culture. The Tiny Lab Talks are brief informal talks about topics such as technology, innovation, research and culture between researchers from the United States who are invited by the University of Aveiro through the American Corner program, and researchers from the University of Aveiro itself. Today we won't really have a researcher from the University of Aveiro. We will have a professor who is visiting us from Italy under the Erasmus exchange program. With the support of the US Embassy in Portugal, the conversations usually take place here at the American Corner's Media Lab in the University of Aveiro. I'd like to start by giving a warm welcome to our guests today, Jeffrey and Fabio. Jeffrey Bardzell is a professor of informatics and director of the HCI and Design program in the School of Informatics, Computing and Engineering at Indiana University. His research examines both design theory and emergent social computing practices. And I also know he's kind of fond of Hello Kitty.
This is true.
Fabio De Andrea is an associate professor in general sociology at the Department of Philosophy, Social Sciences and Education of the University of Perugia. And I'm Paula Alexandra Silva. I am a human-computer interaction designer and lecturer, and currently I'm a principal researcher at the degli Media Research Center here at the University of Aveiro. So let's start with our Tiny Lab talk today. Jeffrey and Fabio, what would you identify as the main landmarks in human-computer interaction design, and how have they shaped the way we use digital technology nowadays? Maybe.
I guess you better start with this
one. Okay. I think I've taught a course called Foundations of HCI, and so I tried to include what I thought were maybe seminal works in that, and I tried to start in the late 70s with the emergence of HCI. It was actually applied psychology, so it was people working within the psychology domain actually saw it as a subdomain of psychology. So Card, Moran, and Newell had a book back in the late 70s, and they first talked about the idea of HCI as a dialogue between a human and a machine. And they used this metaphor of the information processing model. And so basically the computer processed information, the human processed information. And once you merged those two together, you could actually sort of map a dialogue there. So
it's dialoguing with us.
Yeah, it's apparently dialogue. So I think that was one of the early works, and I think the
Poltergeist.
Poltergeist, yeah.
Doing things.
So I think cognitive science was one of the early ways that people framed HCI. But later in the 80s, there was a pushback, and people were starting to look more at context and look more at the way humans actually engage with each other and the way that humans actually engage with machines, and they found that the information processing metaphor had limitations. Okay. So there was some major work by Lucy Suchman, Plans and Situated Actions, as well as Winograd and Flores, that kind of shifted the paradigm to a more of a social computing, and more of a context-based computing.
If I may say something, maybe this is a little later, but that probably would have an interference of the internet. And because of the internet, we stopped having only one person interacting with a single computer, and we were actually connecting lots of different people. So then the social context, I suppose.
That's right. And I think one of the interesting dynamics has been that HCI as an academic field and the evolution of technology itself have been in sort of a dialogue, and it's not clear if one is causing the other or one is shaping the other, or if they're just sort of mutually affecting each other.
Continual interactions and feedbacks. Yeah, I've been working on this a long time because I'm a specialist of a German sociologist that's called Georg Simmel, who as the first put forward an idea that's reconnectable to the idea of feedback. that was Wechselwirkung, reciprocal action. And I work exactly on this. That's to say, on the effect of being together and the constant changes that this implies for a relation. And I'm just working and thinking about this in the sense that I think that we've lost track of the fact that we are also physical beings. And that the fact, the true presence, that's to say that this kind of presence is different from a mediated presence. And I guess we should try and work on this, because otherwise we're losing levels of interactions that are essential for our well-being too. Because once we are in a relation, in a presence relation, a face-to-face relations, I guess other levels of relation kick in. That's to say, smell and chemistry and even, I'd say, energetic kinds of interaction that are a richness that has to be preserved and perhaps tried to be incorporated in programming and thinking about this.
All right, thank you so much. I don't know if I interrupted you, Jeffrey, if you want to add any.
Just a very brief thing.
Okay,
There's been some very recent work in HCI on somaesthetic interaction. I don't know if you've heard of that at all, but it focuses very much on the body and embodiment. And
by
Christina
right?
Hook is one person at KTH in Sweden, but there's also been at KAIST in Korea. A number of people have done some work on that. It's very much in line with what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've been reading a colleague of yours in Oregon, Maxine Sheets Johnston. The corporeal turn.
Yes,
it's quite interesting, that too. I see there is a kind of attention and sensibility about this that I like very much, because I feel it's important for our way of understanding knowledge and building knowledge and so on.
So now, shifting a little bit to your own work, what would you say are the main drivers and influences of your work? Maybe now you would like to start, Fabio, just to...
Well, I'd say, first of all, this Georg Simmel, which I like very much, was an exceptional person and a scholar. And then I've been really working on imagination. We founded a section of the Italian Sociological Association devoted to the imaginary. And I'm trying to put forward the idea that the imaginary is a component of equal dignity of reality than what we used to call reality. I'd even say it's more important, if I can say so, because it all started with imagining and creating things. If we are here, it's because someone thought about things that didn't exist. And so this accent that it's current on doing practical things and things that exist and whatever is interesting from a certain point of view, but I don't think it's enough. We have to try and stimulate and revive imagination. Because in a sense, I'd say that this new wave of, translating books and ideas into movies like the Lord of the Rings and so on. It's beautiful on a certain level, but on another level, it's normative. That means that now you have to think about Gandalf in that way. You can't think of Gandalf in another way that you'd liked forever and so on. So we are in some way paralyzing our imagination, and I think that we are beginning to see that it costs us a lot. And so I'm trying to, it's not easy because, in the scientific world, when you talk about imagination, everyone sees you, you're crazy and whatever. But I think that what we were saying before, this new sensitivity to things that are not so rational and so abstract could be a good fertile ground for this.
I can kind of see why we've been paired now, because I think I have very similar...
No, this is Zen.
Kind of
and synchronicity.
So my background's in literature. And also philosophy were my two, what I got my PhD in. And I think that when I felt in the 90s that I was moving into a dead end, that being in literature I would not be able to have influence, maybe not even be able to find a job. I felt very discouraged. And so I transitioned into technology, and for several years I tried to be somebody that I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I tried to learn, I learned how to code and how to program and build systems and things like that. I wasn't any good at it. But it was only when I came back and I started to be a humanist again. And to ask these kinds of questions that I was actually successful as a researcher, as an academic. And so I would say that one of my biggest goals has been to try to reconnect the humanities and technological development.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly a major agenda has been, well, I have to call it innovation in order to get grants. But what I'm really interested in
I know.
is
you
imagination.
Have to use some keywords, specific keywords.
Speculation and imagination and fiction and creativity and some of these ideas like this. So I probably haven't exactly answered your question. The main sources for me have been probably aesthetic philosophers. And also I've been reading a lot of literature and design theory and trying to create some kind of dialogue between design theory and aesthetic philosophy. But I think the effect has been very much a similar agenda that you're talking about.
That's beautiful. I'd say it's a zeitgeist, the spirit of the time.
Yes, exactly. I hope so.
Yeah,
I
me
hope
too.
it's not just us.
I would dare saying that you guys are, and your research are very timely, because we are kind of entering an era that we have to humanize technology, and the humanistic perspectives need to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah.
So, as we are talking about the future, and we are still the future, but the students are going to be the ones really taking care of the future.
Definitely.
And the younger generations in general. I would like to ask another question. What do you think would be the most important values and skills to teach and develop in the future student or in the future designer?
Right. Shall I?
It's yours.
Oh, it's my turn?
It's your
Okay.
turn.
Yeah, we're taking turns.
Okay, that's fine. I think, well, most of our students enter the program expecting to learn how to design interfaces, and they want to do wireframes, and they want to actually make stuff. But I think one of the real purposes of what we're doing is actually to try to, as a first step, to get them to understand use and users, but then to broaden that into all stakeholders. And as soon as you do that, it has a ripple effect, because the immediate stakeholders maybe become an organization or how two organizations interface, but then you can broaden it even further. So the research we're doing now has actually been on, we've been looking at non-human stakeholders. We've been looking at human-animal interactions, human microbe interactions, and things like that, because obviously we have a climate crisis. And I think that design has been implicated in causing the climate crisis, and I think that design has a responsibility to help us move forward and address that. And so for me, the values are I have a colleague who has an assignment for students, which is design something that's about respecting life. And they get mad because that doesn't sound very corporate. They're afraid I'll never get a job if I have to do something, but I think that's a beautiful assignment. And I think respecting life in a broad sense, present and future life, human and non-human life, to me that's a value that I think we should be teaching.
Yeah, I actually feel tempted to talk about one topic that is very close to my heart, which is the ethics in design and of designers. Yeah. And that's related to that, like you're doing that through, design that respects life. Yeah. But that's a very important skill, I think, that we need to teach students. What are we empowering and allowing technology to do? So what are we creating designs for? But anyway, I'm not the one that should be talking.
Why not? We're here.
Hand it over to you, Fabio.
Yeah, I quite subscribe what Jeffrey was saying, and I'd say too that I think that it's important to stress the fact that you study for a better life and not only for work. That's one of the main short circuits that I'm trying to mend, because it's something that I really hate, if I can be a bit passionate about this. That's to say that to get to an ethic point of view, you have to be aware of what you can and cannot do and what you think is right or wrong. So it's something that's active. whereas our culture is trying in clandestine ways to render us incapable of taking position, of standing up.
Yeah.
And so that's quite a great problem, and I think that it's in this kind of ripple effects that you were mentioning, it has a major, it plays a major role. That's to say that we don't believe in our capacity of doing things and being actors. We just say it, but we don't behave as if we believed it. And I think that students at the university should be made aware of the importance. And we have lots of stuff, even scientific stuff, that comforts this. I think, you know, for instance, the butterfly effect. It's hard to put things together, but if you think about it, it means that even you could be the start of an avalanche or a ripple effect, of a domino effect. And I used to say in my lessons, you think that Gandhi knew that he'd be starting what he started when he started? No, but he believed. So if you don't think of yourself as potentially able to change things, you have already lost.
Yes.
And that's not a thing that we can afford anymore, I think. So that's one of the main jobs that it's up to us.
Yeah, that was very profound. Thank you so much. Well, I'm kind of aware of the time, and I am responsible for that. So I'm going to pose you with my last question. And I would like to ask you, what do you think are the main challenges we as designers are going to face in the future?
Yeah, I'll leave it again to you.
Oh,
As
it's your turn.
You are the designer.
No, but it's your turn.
Yeah, but I'm not so designer. So
Imagine that we are designing a digital product or a digital solution.
yeah.
What will the biggest challenge will be for us? You know, like
Well,
in this
I guess we
this process.
should mend lots of things that have been broken up to now. That's to say that I was just talking about the either-or paradigm, and I'm working toward an and paradigm. That's to say that we have to keep things together or put them back together, because we're not able any longer to keep things together. We've been dividing things up until the end. That's to say, atoms and then quantas and then whatever. And we're not finding the end of it, and so this process of dividing and division is something that's getting out of control in my perspective. That's to say that we find it in politics, for instance. You know, political movements, political parties split up, get one against the others. Bad things are coming back from a past that we too easily thought forgotten. And I think that's up to us to make it clear that things can coexist and people can coexist. And this is, I think, the main challenge of the 21st century.
So I would like to go back to something you said earlier about the sense that a lot of us don't realize the agency that we actually have.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that one role of design is not only to support our individual agency, but also to try to help others realize that agency as well. And I think to go back to my earlier point about the non-human actors, I think we can also look at that as well. So we have a PhD student right now, and basically her entire agenda is, she's a designer, she's a design background. She's looking at the ways that designers can kind of meet some non-human agency halfway. And so she's looking at processes of decomposition or of fermentation. Or of the way that insects contribute to the health of soil in agriculture, in ways that humans might interact with non-human actors to create interactions that are actually powerful and very good.
Yeah, of course.
And all of this is within a context. I'm reminded from what you were saying by something, I can't remember which one, but it was one of the Frankfurt School critics said that if you're not a little bit utopian, you've already given up.
Yeah.
You've already
That's
sort
it.
of locked yourself into incremental. If you foreclose the possibility of a radically better future.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea that I think the challenge for designers is to remember that we can potentially create a radically better future. It might be fragmented, it might be broken, it might be awkward getting there, but we have that potential. That we can bring about that potential in others through democratization of technology and access, and also by taking much more seriously non-human actors and environments that we can possibly heal some of what we've done and find new ways to support interactions that do good work.
I definitely agree, even because we have to leave this anthropocentric position that we have managed to get to, and remember that if we live thanks to non-human actors.
Yeah.
That's to say that we are, I was saying today, we are universes to trillions of bacteria and other living beings that live inside us as we live inside the world. And this is something that we've totally lost. I see, you see all those products to exterminate bacteria and to be hygienic at 99% and that.
Right.
And I think, well, and how do we cope with the world if we
we
exterminate this?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, because we got 30 trillions of bacteria inside us, and we live thanks to them.
Yeah.
So we should be a bit more, we need more humility to cope with the world in a way that's sustainable and manageable. Yeah, we got to think of ourselves in a different way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, thank you so much. I believe we now need to start taking questions, either from the audience or people watching us over YouTube. Oh, we do have a question. So we have a question
A
there
good question.
from Margarida Almeida, and it's the following. Design thinking requires time and reflection. How do you include it in the engineering processes that need to be fast?
Yeah, that's a great issue.
So, one of you wants to take it?
I'm happy to start, but please.
Yeah, go on.
I think the relationship between design and engineering has been really dynamic over the years, and I think that often people think of design as what happens after engineering, where you make a product pretty. And I think designers have been trying to move to the ahead of engineering, so the designers sort of set agendas, and engineers then build those things that designers envision. But I think the reality is much more interactive. And so I think that it's actually okay that they operate on different temporalities, because products actually have long lifespans. And so even you put out a product, you redesign the product, we're constantly updating with these agile methods. So there's all sorts of flexibility built in. So I think that the differing time scales of things actually, we're able to accommodate them with the processes we have.
Yeah, I think so. But I think too that we should stress this fact. That's to say that the idea that it's not that faster is better at any level and at any rate. Because I'd say that it's not only a question of designing, but also of understanding and knowing. Knowing takes time. It's not mechanic. It's something that happens.
Yeah.
I used to say, as Pythagoras said, "Eureka! You got it." And it happens at the most awkward moments, when you're taking a shower or you're talking with someone, and suddenly, oh yeah, that's it. I found it. And so this is another question that I'd like to put forward. That's to say that more often than not, we find things when we're not looking for them.
Yes, that's right.
And so living a leeway and some time to be on your own, to not do things, to be free of not thinking and of doing even trivial things. I'm a video gamer. And so I've been playing Lord of the Rings online for 11 years now, so I'm an old player. And then I used to role play and whatever. And I think that it's essential for a good life, a good working life and a good thinking life, to have some time that it's not devoted to thinking or getting things done or thinking up things and all that stuff. And we should try and include this into our routines and our schedules.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And that's where the reflection part comes in. We need to allow time for things to settle. And this goes back to what we were discussing before, that things don't really need to be only short term.
Right.
They can be medium and long term, and then we will allow the necessary time for things to develop.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we have any more questions
from our beautiful audience.
Well, if we don't have more questions, and again, I'm aware of the time, and there's plenty of topics I'd like to continue discussing with you, but I'm receiving signs over there. So I thank you so much for the questions and the enlightening answers. And I would like, before I wrap up, I would like to bring your attention to an event the Department of Communication and Art will be holding tomorrow to celebrate Internet Day. You're all very welcome to attend. The event is estimated to start at 9, and Professor Bardzell will give a keynote at about 9:30. So this is it for today. Thank you both for being here. We would like to take this opportunity to also thank the support again of the US Embassy in Lisbon. And last but not least, thank you all for coming and watching if you're on YouTube. The next Tiny Lab Talk will happen soon. Stay tuned to the Tiny Lab Talk social media networks and don't miss the next talk. Thank you.
Bye.